There are stories that shake you to your core. But then there are stories that leave you breathless, trembling and questioning everything you thought you knew about trust, betrayal, and power. And this is not just another Hollywood scandal. This is a tale of manipulation, of lies, of rights stolen, and reputations destroyed. A story so dark, so twisted, so shocking that once you hear it, you will never look at Colleen Hoover Blake Lively or Justin Baldoni the same way again. And you are watching Starscope, where the truth is never silenced. The storm began quietly, whispers that seemed insignificant at first, whispers about creative differences, about silent tensions, on the set of a film that was supposed to symbolize healing, strength, and survival. But those whispers grew louder until they became roars, tearing apart the illusion of unity and exposing a darkness that fans never imagined could exist behind the glossy covers of best-selling novels and the polished red carpet smiles of Hollywood stars. Because what unfolded between Colleen Hoover Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni was not just conflict, it was betrayal. It was sabotage. It was the kind of destruction that rewrites careers and fractures the faith of millions who once believed in their heroes. And as the truth began to bleed through the cracks, it became clear that Colleen Hoover had not merely stumbled into controversy. She had engineered it piece by piece, move by move, aligning herself with Blake Lively, whose power in Hollywood was sharp, cold, and calculated like a blade hidden in silk. And together, their actions forced Justin Baldoni into silence, stripped of his voice, and erased from the very project he had dedicated his life to bringing alive. Fans looked on in horror, wondering how could the author they once cherished, the woman who claimed to give survivors a voice, be the same person who stood beside a star, who bent the entire production to her will, who replaced authenticity with vanity, who demanded control until the very heart of the story was gutted. And what about Justin? The man whose passion was meant to protect the integrity of the book adaptation, suddenly muted, accused, manipulated, trapped within a morality clause that became a weapon against him, not a protection of truth, but a silencing tool wielded with precision to cast him into shadow, while Colleen and Blake tightened their grip on the narrative. And as receipts surfaced, as timelines were dissected by relentless fans, the horror deepened. Colleen had quietly launched Heartbones Entertainment, a move that revealed ambition, not loyalty. She had switched her legal team to powerhouse firms that specialized in burying scandals. She had vanished from social media when subpoenas threatened to pull her into the light of accountability, and Blake had stepped into the chaos like a queen claiming her throne with charm, calculated interviews, and a radiant mask that hid the cold manipulator beneath and through it all. Justin was left behind, and fans who once adored Colleen, who once dreamed of Blake stepping into their beloved story, now saw only betrayal, only greed, only ruthless ambition. And as I tell you this here on Starscope, you must ask yourself, how deep does this betrayal go? How many strings were pulled? How many secrets remain hidden? How many lives were damaged by a machine built not on healing but on destruction? And yet the story twists again and again, because Colleen's past controversies, her tone-deaf coloring book, her defense of her son against accusations of assault, her pattern of profiting from trauma all resurfaced like ghosts demanding to be seen, reminding fans that this was not an isolated storm. It was a cycle, a pattern, a truth too chilling to ignore. And as the outrage grows, as the puzzle pieces lock into place, the suspense suffocates. Because if Colleen Hoover and Blake Lively could orchestrate this, what else could they be hiding? What darker truths have yet to be revealed, and how far will they go to ensure that the empire they built on betrayal stands unchallenged? The deeper we look, the more grotesque the truth becomes, because what seems like a simple disagreement over creative direction unravels into a carefully crafted campaign of dominance, manipulation, and silencing, designed to destroy reputations while elevating power-hungry egos to heights they did not deserve. And the trail of devastation left in the wake of Colleen Hoover and Blake Lively's maneuvers is staggering. Fans once loyal are now disgusted, yet unable to look away, trapped in the same endless cycle of questions that plague Justin Baldoni himself. Because how does a man who poured his soul into adapting a story about survival, about breaking cycles, about finding hope, become erased from his own creation? The answer lies not in fairness, but in corruption, in the cunning exploitation of morality. Clauses, contracts weaponized like daggers wielded to force silence. When truth threatened to rise, contracts designed not to protect justice, but to suffocate it. And while Baldoni was trapped, Colleen and Blake tightened their grip, smiling for cameras, weaving polished statements, pretending unity as they carved him out of the narrative, and the fans began to dig. They uncovered timelines, receipts, subtle connections that painted a chilling picture. Colleen did not simply vanish from social media. She retreated under legal guidance to avoid discovery to shield herself from the subpoenas circling closer. Blake, meanwhile, maneuvered like a predator, cloaking her ambition in charm, manipulating perception with precision. And yet, beneath the glamour, fans saw glimpses of the ruthless heart driving her the way. She hijacked the casting process the way she reshaped the script until the raw, brutal truth of survival was drowned in a glittering vanity project. And in the center of this storm lies the most unsettling truth of all. Colleen Hoover was never the helpless bystander she was portrayed to be. She was a co-architect of this betrayal. Her partnership with Heartbones Entertainment, her sudden legal restructuring, her silence when fans demanded accountability. All of it revealed intense strategy and calculation. And while Hollywood circled the wagons protecting its powerful insiders, the fans refused to stay silent. They dissected every move, every missing post, every cryptic message, building a picture so damning it became impossible to dismiss. And here on Starscope, we refuse to let that picture fade, because this is bigger than one scandal. This is a mirror reflecting the rotten core of an industry that thrives on betrayal. An industry where survivor stories are commodified, where art becomes currency, and where power is preserved through silencing those who dare to challenge it. And still the questions spiral endlessly. What did Colleen gain from discarding Justin Baldoni? What did Blake achieve beyond her inflated image? Why? Did they silence the very voice that fought to keep the story authentic? Was it fear of truth? Was it greed? Was it pure, ruthless ambition? Or was it all three feeding off each other in a cycle too toxic to escape? And as the outrage grows, as more victims of Hollywood manipulation speak out, this scandal becomes not an isolated explosion, but a domino in a chain reaction of exposure. Because if Colleen and Blake could destroy Justin so cleanly, so efficiently, then who else have they silenced? Who else has been buried under contracts, lawyers, and carefully engineered lies and the terror? The haunting reality is that we may never know the full extent, because every time one truth is revealed, another shadow emerges, another detail is uncovered. Another betrayal seeps through the cracks, keeping audiences hooked, horrified, and unable to look away. Because this is not a story with closure. This is a story designed to bleed endlessly. The third layer of this scandal unfolds like a nightmare that refuses to end. And every revelation feels heavier, more suffocating, more unbearable than the last. Because what we are truly witnessing is not just betrayal, but the systematic dismantling of a man's voice, of an artist's vision, and of a community's trust in stories that were supposed to heal them. And if paragraph 1 was the spark, and paragraph 2 was the raging fire, then this is the smoke-filled, suffocating aftermath where truth struggles to breathe, where lies hang in the air like poison, choking everyone who dared to believe in something pure. And as Justin Baldoni stood powerless, trapped in silence by contracts and manipulations, the machine around Colleen Hoover and Blake Lively roared louder, drowning him out with polished interviews, glamour shots, and staged smiles. But beneath the shimmer lay the stench of rot, the undeniable proof that power was preserved through exploitation and destruction. Colleen, a woman, once lifted by fans as a voice for survivors, was now wielding her platform like a shield, deflecting accountability while simultaneously cashing in on trauma. Blake, a star adored for her beauty and talent, revealed herself as a cold strategist, bending the story into a mirror of her own ego, while fans who begged for authenticity were ignored, erased, discarded like nothing more than background noise, and Hollywood played its part, well enabling this charade, sheltering its golden names while damning the very man who fought for truth. And as the chaos grew, so too did the outrage. Fans across platforms began piecing together the puzzle, sharing timelines, receipts, whispers of lawsuits, and suddenly the picture sharpened. Colleen's disappearance from social media was no accident. It was a strategy. Her hiring of powerhouse lawyers was not precaution, it was preparation. Her ties to Heartbones Entertainment were not coincidence. They were part of a larger plan to seize control. And Blake, she was no passive pawn. She was the executioner, her influence reshaping everything from casting to script until the soul of the story was unrecognizable, twisted into a shallow performance designed to glorify her image rather than illuminate the pain of survivors. And Justin Baldoni became the casualty. The silent victim, erased not because he was unworthy, but because he dared to fight for authenticity. And here on Starscope, we will not allow that silence to stand, because this is more than Hollywood. Politics. This is a crime against truth, a war against integrity, a betrayal of millions who trusted Colleen, who adored Blake, and who respected Justin, and every loop of this scandal, every twist, every revelation drags us deeper into the horror making. Us ask, how could Colleen Hoover preach healing while orchestrating destruction? How could Blake Lively smile for cameras while stabbing at the heart of authenticity? How could Hollywood turn its back on justice to protect its chosen stars? And if this could happen so publicly, what darker schemes hide in the shadows? What projects were gutted before fans even knew what they lost? What artists were silenced before their voices could rise, and the questions will not stop? The outrage will not die, and the suspense will not loosen its grip, because this scandal is not about closure. It is about endless exposure. A reminder that truth in Hollywood is not given. It is stolen, ripped, clawed, from beneath the weight of manipulation and greed. And the fight for that truth will never end. This is the breaking point, the place where the scandal does not just reveal itself, it consumes everything it touches. And as the dust of Hollywood glamour fades, the skeletons buried in the closets of Colleen Hoover and Blake Lively begin to rattle louder than ever, shaking the industry to its core. And the question becomes not whether they betrayed Justin Baldoni, but how far they were willing to go to maintain their empire. Because what we see now is a web so tangled, so meticulously constructed that every thread leads to another horror. Every silence masks another lie. Every calculated move conceals another ruthless betrayal. And as the fans watch the unmasking of their idols, the rage builds not quietly, but violently. Because people feel robbed, stripped of the authenticity they were promised, and instead force-fed an illusion. An illusion polished by red carpet smiles and interviews crafted in boardrooms, where the only goal was power preservation. And yet, even as the facade cracks, Colleen and Blake continue their performance, unflinching, unyielding, relentless in their pursuit of control and dominance. And Justin remains in the shadows, his truth shackled by contracts and legal cages. A man who dared to fight for integrity, now punished for his courage, but the fans are no longer silent. They demand receipts. They demand answers, they demand accountability, and in that demand, the story shifts from being just a scandal to becoming a revolution, exposing not just the betrayal of one man, but the sickness of an entire system that thrives on silencing voices and monetizing trauma. And here on Starscope, we follow every twist, every revelation, every shocking piece of evidence that rises to the surface like a haunting ghost, because this story will not let go. It loops endlessly, dragging you deeper each time you think you have reached the bottom, because there is no bottom. Only darker layers, only sharper knives, only more suffocating lies. And when you realize Colleen Hoover was never the victim, never the helpless bystander, but the calculating architect, the orchestrator of silence, the profiteer of pain, the weight of betrayal crushes down. And when you see Blake Lively, not as the dazzling star, but as the executioner who bent an entire narrative to glorify her ego, the rage ignites and the horror settles, because you understand this was not miscommunication, it was domination. Not mistake, but premeditation. Not fallout, but a masterclass in manipulation and betrayal. And Hollywood stood by, watched, and even applauded as long as the money flowed, and the brand image remained untarnished, and the fans, the very heartbeat of the story, were left shattered. Betrayed, disillusioned, robbed of the authenticity they begged for, and every loop of outrage keeps pulling us back because the betrayal is too big to ignore, too shocking to forget, too painful to forgive. And still, we must ask, how many more Justin Baldoni exist, trapped, silenced, buried alive under contracts? How many more Colleen Hoovers are out there smiling to their fans while secretly orchestrating destruction? How many more Blake Lively's wield their influence like a sword, smiling for the cameras while carving out the very soul of the art they claim to represent? And the cycle repeats, the outrage grows, the silence suffocates, the truth bleeds through, and the story loops endlessly, because this is not just drama. This is devastation. This is betrayal. This is Hollywood unmasked. And now we descend into the abyss, because after every revelation, after every shocking twist, after every betrayal laid bare, we realize the story is not just about Colleen Hoover, not just about Blake Lively, not even just about Justin Baldoni. It is about an entire world built on lies and illusions, a world where the smiling faces of Hollywood hide the knives they use to stab the truth, a world where survivors are turned into marketing slogans, and trauma is transformed into currency to be bought and sold and discarded when no longer profitable. And here is where the horror becomes undeniable, Because when you peel back the glitter, when you tear down the walls of performance, what you find is not artistry, not compassion, not healing, but greed, vanity, and power dressed in expensive clothes and paraded in front of us as if it were noble. And the fans see it now clearer than ever. They see the patterns, the endless manipulation, the way Colleen Hoover used her silence as a weapon, as a shield, as a strategy to buy time to erase her mistakes while maintaining her empire. They see how Blake Lively crafted every moment, every camera angle, every script change. Not for the story, not for survivors, not for justice, but for herself, for her image, for her empire. And they see how Justin Baldoni, the man who fought for the truth, the man who dared to stand up for authenticity, was buried under this mountain of deception. Crushed not because he failed, but because he refused to surrender his integrity. And in that refusal, he became the target, the victim, the scapegoat. And yet his silence speaks louder than their noise, because his absence, his erasure, his exile has become the proof of everything fans feared about this rotten machine. And Starscope will not let that silence fade, will not let that erasure succeed, because every scandal, every betrayal, every manipulation needs to be dragged into the light and exposed for what it truly is. And the cycle continues. Fans rage then, despair, then rage again, caught in an endless loop because the betrayal does not end. The revelations do not stop. The horror never fades. It deepens with every new discovery, every new whisper, every new crack in the facade. And the truth becomes unbearable, because it reveals that this was never an isolated scandal. This was never a one-time betrayal. This was never just about one man, one author, one actress. This is the template. This is the pattern. This is how Hollywood operates, feeding on silence, thriving on manipulation, destroying truth, and then repackaging the ruins as entertainment for the masses. And fans feel trapped, horrified, addicted, unable to look away. Because every time they try to turn away, a new piece of the puzzle emerges, a new betrayal loops them back, and a new horror hooks them deeper, and still the question remains: how many more lives have been shattered? How many more voices silenced? How many more truths erased? How many more idols unmasked? And the loop does not close, because it cannot close. Not until the system itself is shattered. Not until the machine is dismantled. Not until the truth is freed from the chains that bind it. And until then, the horror repeats endlessly, looping, looping, looping like a nightmare that never ends, and so we reach the end. Yet there is no true end. Because the betrayal lingers in the air like smoke suffocating, refusing to fade the story of Colleen Hoover. Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni is not just a scandal, it is a mirror reflecting the rotten heart of Hollywood, showing us how power destroys truth, how ambition corrupts art, how silence is weaponized to erase those who stand in the way. And though we stand here in the ashes of this chaos, the fire still burns because the wounds it created do not close. They remain open raw, bleeding reminders of what was stolen from fans, from survivors, from the very people who believed they were being given a voice. Instead, they were given manipulation. Instead, they were given greed instead. They were given betrayal, and here on Starscope, we cannot offer you comfort, because the truth is not comforting. It is brutal, it is chilling, it is relentless, and it demands to be seen, to be remembered, to be repeated again and again until the cycle is broken. Because if we forget, the betrayal repeats. If we turn away, the lies grow stronger. If we remain silent, the manipulators win. So we leave you with this final thought. The scandal is not over. It is only the beginning, and the questions will keep haunting. How many more truths remain hidden? How many more idols are illusions? How many more betrayals are waiting in the shadows? The answers are out there, but they will not be given freely. They will have to be torn from the hands of those who profit from silence, and until then, the loop of outrage, the loop of pain, the loop of betrayal will continue.